In this video I'm going to show you Windows Server 2008, and we'll call this the condensed install because everything's been speeded up by about 12 times. Here we see the Windows pre-installation environment loading into memory. The kernel for the pre-installation environment actually booting up. And at this point we go into actual setup, and here is where you'll actually set up the language, the time and currency format, and the input method. And the reason why you do this is it will aid you in the install. And we'll just click next. Now we have a couple choices. One choice is to install, the other is to actually repair our computer, and we can always hit exit and you'll exit out, and that's the upper right hand corner, the X. So we'll go ahead and install, and we get up to the point where we need to put in a product activation code. We're going to skip over this. It's actually recommended that you skip over this and you run the server for 60 days, 30 days, whatever they give you, to make sure that you don't need to actually upgrade the server in that time period. If you did, you'd have to reactivate the product. So it's always advisable to put in the activation key at the last minute. Here we actually select the product that we want to install. Now this media comes with all of the installs on it, and they actually put them into what they call a deduped DVD. It means that Standard and Enterprise and Data Center share all the same DLLs, so they basically just condense them together. We'll choose Enterprise here, and we'll say yes, we've purchased this version, and click next. Now this is what they call the EULA, or the End User License Agreement. In prior versions they made you scroll through the whole thing. We're just going to click Accept and click Next. Now, if you had a prior version of Windows on the computer, you could actually upgrade. We have a blank hard drive here, so upgrade's been disabled, and we'll just click on the Custom Advanced. And we'll go straight into where we want to actually install this. If no drives showed up, we'd actually have to click Load Drivers, and this was the old F6 key for Windows 2003. Now they have a GUI button. If we wanted to custom partition, we can use the advanced options, but we're just going to click on the whole drive and click Next and continue with the install. And again, keep in mind everything's been speeded up by about 12 here, and basically I've cut out a lot of the waiting and waiting and waiting. So right now it's copying the files over, it's expanding those files. Basically they're in a Windows image format, or WIM, and they're basically uncompressing, and this process takes about a half hour. There is no internet connectivity, so it's skipped over installing updates. At this point the computer is going to reboot, and when it reboots it's going to actually boot into the kernel, not in the pre-installation environment anymore. It's actually going to boot into the kernel that was installed during the unpacking process just now. Now you'll see this window for about 15 minutes. What it's doing is it's doing driver detection and getting everything set up for the next stage of installation. And then we'll see this screen for a little bit. Again, I've spared you all of the waiting and waiting. And at this point, we're going to complete the installation, and it's going to promptly reboot again. And this is actually the final reboot. The next time it actually boots up, everything is actually finalized and ready for what they called the first run experience. So this is the last, that was the last reboot that we'll have to do during this setup process. And at this point, you actually have a GUI. You actually have a familiar, screen, but we have to change the password. Now, you need to note that this password has to be complex. It has to have upper, lowercase, and numbers and symbols. Password complexity is actually turned on by default. Once password's changed, we can actually log into the profile, and again, this is the first run, so it's going to prepare the desktop for about 2 to 3 minutes. I've edited that out. And at this point we have a GUI, and we also have the initial configurations tasks. And one of the first things that we do is set up the time zone. So we'll go ahead and change the time zone to -5 Eastern Standard Time. And then we'll go ahead and configure the network. By default, it's DHCP. Now, it's important to note that both TCP version 6 and 4 are bound. We're going to go ahead and set up an IP address of 192.168.1.1 and keep the default subnet mask, and unbind version 6. Now you'll notice on the initial configuration task pane, it's now updated the IP. Let's go ahead and change the name of the server. During the installation, it will auto-name it. We'll name it Server 1. You can also change the domain and workgroup. We're going to click OK. It's going to tell us we have to reboot. That's fine. We can actually tell it to reboot later. We can set up automatic updates or manually configure them here. And we can also set up the automatic updates, the Windows error reporting, and the customer experience. It's basically feedback from Microsoft. We can add roles here. We can add features. We can enable remote desktop and also configure the firewall. Just going to click Do Not Show That Again. And what we now see display on the screen is actually the server manager, and this is pretty much where you'll do all of the server management from here on out on Windows Server 2008. This is really the meat and potatoes of where you're going to configure everything.